The T in the Create Classroom stands for timely. And timely is basically another fancy way of us saying relevant, I guess you could say. The T in Create stands for trying to find a way to connect to students where they're at and what's going on in the world around them. With the debate classes, it's a very easy thing to do. You simply focus in on the current events. Each day, the coffee talk is centered around some sort of current event. Now, that current event could be international. We spent a lot of time in the fall talking about the election and the results of the election. This was a big deal for our students, and they wanted to discuss the methods and the manner in which that occurred and what the next steps were. But it could also be something very local. And so in that particular debate class, we talk a lot about school rules. Oftentimes dress code comes up, and that seems to be a very common thing that we discuss and talk about. What we find is that the importance of the timeliness of what we're doing is really about finding a way to connect with students where they're at. And of course, the Coffee Talk current event model is a very easy way to do that. But even beyond that, the model is to constantly seek ways to connect students with the learning that they have to achieve with their prior knowledge and where that might be. So for instance, in my psychology classes, what often happens is that we ask them to, when we learn about a developmental stage, for instance, we are doing developmental psychology, we are talking about students at the teenage level, and it's very easy for us to connect at that level. But when we're talking about the development of a smaller child, say a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old, if we have students who have those particular siblings of those age, we invite them to share what their experiences are or what they remember from that time frame. Conversely, we also will have issues where students do have knowledge of these things. When we're talking about social movements in sociology, if you're in a history class, if you're talking about perhaps the civil rights movement, students who have relatives who specifically went through that, who went through the process, went through the hardships of the civil rights movement, who shared those stories. That becomes a way in which, though it's not timely in the sense that it's happening right now, it becomes relevant to the students because they can see somebody who has been impacted directly by the power of that particular movement or that particular time frame. I think it's a very important thing to be timely, to need to meet your students where they're at. I think it's perfectly acceptable to try to find ways to work the current climate of your school into a lesson. What's going on there? What are kids celebrating? It was really great. We actually did a unit where the football team was headed off to the state semifinals, and it happened to be during one of my sociology classes. So we went out, we observed the football team leaving, the entire school emptying and observing the celebration of this, came back to class and we talked about the sociological impact of sport. How does sport affect us sociologically? How does that change the behaviors and the expectations that we have and the social norms? You know, seventh period, sixth period in a day, are you supposed to be in class learning, or are you supposed to be celebrating the football team? And how all that comes together to form the culture of a school is a great way to talk about how all those things can come together and form the overall culture of a society. So there's definitely a lot of ways in which you can create a timely environment for your Create classroom.